But with that, Dominic, let's just go ahead and get into it. Israel Adesanya takes on Sean Strickland in your main event for the middleweight title. And he's a big old favorite.
Yeah.
Minus 650. Sean Strickland plus 470. A lot of that has to do with Dominic. Well, Israel Adesanya is really that dude again. He avenged his last loss in the UFC to Alex Pereira, took back his title. That win was all too sweet for old Izzy after Alex had beat him twice in kickboxing, beat him in their first UFC bout. He was the boogeyman in a lot of ways for Izzy, and he was able to kind of get that monkey off his back. He moves on here, taking on Sean Strickland, who has sort of been thrusted into this position in not the most ideal terms, I think would be the best way to put it. He main evented a fight night back in July against a big yellow bus. He looked fantastic there. However, he is now making this turnaround, which if he had known he was getting this title fight immediately after, it's not a perfect turnaround, just 2 months, but it can be done.
Yes.
But no, the UFC sort of pussyfooted around, not wanting to commit to giving Sean Strickland that title fight until they basically had no other choice.
Yeah.
So he's really coming in here on just a handful of weeks of preparation, going into enemy territory. He's already going to be a big underdog, but you put all those factors into place. It looks like a steep hill to climb. Is that how you're feeling about this fight, or has the moxie, the energy that Sean Strickland's been bringing during fight week, has that convinced you that maybe, just maybe, we will have our first canceled UFC champion?
No, I probably lean with the former there, Noah. Just, I'll say this, though. All those circumstances that you described, and it only seems fitting that Sean Strickland is the guy that is stepping up and doing this title fight with all of the hoopla going on around him, sitting at number 5, only, like you said, a handful of weeks to come into this fight. But I think it's a hard fight, and I understand the line here. Short notice aside, the styles, I don't think, suit Sean Strickland well either. When you look at his best skill set, I should say, is being on the feet and the technical brawler that we've talked about so many times now on the show. And Israel Adesanya is one of the best kickboxers in the history of the UFC, and that is his wheelhouse. I just think it is a tall, steep hill for Sean Strickland to climb, but if he does, it would be a massive upset here for him being the underdog, and it would be a crazy whirlwind of events if come Sunday morning Sean Strickland is the UFC middleweight champion, but it will not come easy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine a world where Sean Strickland, I wake up Sunday and Sean Strickland, UFC champion.
Gold belt around his waist.
Just say that, Dominic. Just say the words. Sean Strickland, UFC champion.
UFC champion.
You did not say the words.
Sean Strickland is UFC champion.
See, it just doesn't feel natural coming out. That's why I could tell you were struggling. You're like UFC champion. I'm like, no, say Sean Strickland. No. Put them together.
Yeah.
The lid. Yeah, all that. Yeah, it just feels so bizarre, the idea of him being a UFC champion. And when I say all this, it's not due to any sort of deficiency in his skill. He's a very good fighter. And I think he's kind of proven that with whether or not it's been the most entertaining of fashions. He's looked pretty good. He's been given fight night main event spots. Like they've sort of allowed him to carry some of these Apex cards. He's going up against guys like Abbas Magomedov, who was a guy the UFC were potentially putting in a position to kind of build a next middleweight contender. And instead Strickland kind of embarrassed him a little bit. Of course, he did lose a very close decision to Jared Cannonier, but then he came right back and main evented the very next fight night a couple weeks later and dominated another potentially promising middleweight, Nasruddin Imavov. So Sean Strickland is a skilled fighter, especially if you kind of allow him to fight at his pace and go tit for tat with him. Not a lot of people can do it because he is skilled on the feet. But like you said, Israel Adesanya, of course, just has a huge edge due to his pedigree as a kickboxer. The reason why it's just weird to say is because the cult of personality that Sean Strickland's built for himself the last couple years, it's really been kind of crazy to watch. Like this guy
Mhm.
is kind of he's kind of a is am I crazy? Is he kind of I can't say star, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't go as far to say star because I don't think he's quite like I don't think he's even quite at like a Colby Covington. Like
Mhm.
I don't think
Mhm.
people are necessarily tuning in to watch Sean Strickland who
Right.
otherwise would not. But he started out just with this personality that was so brash. He was saying the craziest things, going on MMA Hour, talking about being a former neo-Nazi, and
Mhm.
he goes on Rogan and starts talking about all this fucked up shit that happened to him as a kid. Post fight against Magomedov, he's talking about, hey, I say a lot of fucked up shit, but I just love this country and all this stuff.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, Dominic, Sean Strickland has sort of become, for at least a portion of the audience, a fan favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, is that fair to kind of describe him as? Because let's be honest, when you describe Sean Strickland, a lot of the ways you would describe him might be similar things that us as kind of neutral parties in this, like not guys that love or hate
Mhm.
him, is sort of how we may describe another guy who we sort of feel pretty neutral about, but is also very controversial. And I already mentioned him, Colby Covington.
Right.
Yet the reactions from the audience feel so different. Why is that? What has Sean Strickland done that sort of captured, at least for a portion of the UFC audience? He has sort of captured something.
I think it's that he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. I think that resonates with a lot of people, and that's why he's been able to put himself in these positions and get a couple main events here and there, get put into this title fight. I think that is the reason he is the we have McDonald's at home version of Colby Covington in a way, but at the same time he's not because he'll say a lot of shit that even Colby Covington wouldn't say. So it's weird the dynamic that he's built. But I think that is what resonates with people and what people have. And I think too with Sean, he does have some people that like him, but I think there are a lot of people that hate him for the same reason and will tune in for the sole purpose of seeing him lose. And it's kind of the same thing with Izzy. And now they're like put together here. So
Yeah.
you add that up, it feels like it is a pretty big fight in terms of getting eyeballs onto it. I know Sean Strickland is not going to blow the roof off of the pay-per-view numbers or have the highest fight night main event watches on ESPN Plus, but you pair all that he's about with one of the biggest stars in the UFC right now, Noah, in Israel Adesanya. I have to say this now while it's on the brain. He coming this including this fight, this will be Izzy's 10th straight pay-per-view main event. If that doesn't tell you how big of a star Izzy is, I don't know what will. So you combine that storm together, there is something to this fight, regardless of maybe on paper or what the odds say of a landslide victory for Adesanya.
After saying I don't hate Sean Strickland, I feel the need to clarify because it could be a little hard to tell. I'm not wearing a Make America Great Again hat right now. I feel like at a certain angle, it kind of looks like it.
Give him a little
I
head
just
nod. I'll get a zoom in there.
I don't support politicians. I support day drinking. I think
That's
something that
right.
we can all get behind. I just felt the need because I was kind of looking and I'm like, damn, in the right light, this kind of looks like a MAGA hat.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so with moving on from that, for me, what I think Sean Strickland has done really well, and I don't even think it's necessarily fully on purpose. I'm sure there's a little bit of Sean Strickland, the way he presents himself, the way he talks. I'm sure a little bit of it's
Kind of
calculated. Like these guys
turns
are
it up a
pretty
little.
smart. Yeah, like these
Yeah.
guys are smart guys. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, they're fighters. They come from tough backgrounds. I believe a lot of what Sean Strickland says. I believe a lot of his backstory.
Mhm.
But I do think at this point anyway, maybe it started kind of as just him being himself. But I do think a part of it is like not necessarily a character, but I think he's just calculated in that he knows what's going to get a reaction out of people,
Yes.
or at least he
Yes.
has people around him who have a good pulse on that.
Yes.
Dominic, he's done. I this is gonna come off. I don't know how this is gonna come off to people. Sean Strickland to a lesser extent than the man I'm about to describe, is sort of doing with Israel Adesanya what Chael Sonnen did so well with Anderson Silva.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, is Sean Strickland close to the talker that Chael Sonnen is? No.
Not many are.
Is it to the scale that Chael Sonnen was able to do with Anderson Silva? As of now, no.
Mm-hmm.
Chael, of course, goes in and pretty much dominates the first fight with
Yeah.
Silva. Obviously, Silva comes around and gets that submission victory. But that basically made Chael Sonnen not just a temporary kind of name. He became one of the biggest names
Oh,
in the
yeah.
sport. But what Sean Strickland's doing is he's taking a guy in Israel Adesanya, who's one of the biggest stars in the company, a guy who the UFC brass love, who the fans are split on. He's cocky. He's controversial sometimes, or he's got that split where some people love him, some people hate him for one reason or another, right? And he's antagonizing him. He's going after him about some pretty nutty stuff, the dog, the China, like
Yeah.
he is going after him for issues that you've never heard anybody,
Yeah,
any of
literally.
Izzy's opponents, or really anybody ever go after him for. And there is, for guys who don't like Israel Adesanya, he's an easy guy to kind of cling to and be like, yeah, he's going after him. He's speaking about some of these things that I don't like about Israel Adesanya. Fuck him. Izzy's one of the biggest stars in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he's divisive in some ways. Like without, I don't know if he's really trying to be, but he does have this divisive kind of personality about himself.
Yeah.
Sean has essentially been like, hey, you don't like Israel Adesanya? Come to me. I'm the opposite of Israel Adesanya, I don't do that with my dogs. I don't like China. Fuck China. I'm American.
Yeah, that's literally, yeah.
So what he's doing is working. If he were to win, Dominic, do not be surprised if Sean Strickland, when it's all said and done, months down the line, we go, man, look at this guy's rise. Now he's one of the most talked about guys in the sport. I don't want to say one of the biggest stars in the sport because it still just sounds so crazy. But,
yeah.
At worst here, though, I think he has kind of legitimized himself as a name to at least that you have to pay attention to moving forward. But now he just needs to go in there and win to really set the roof off of what he sort of built for himself. Because I think a lot of people will sort of write it off, oh, he's saying a lot of cringy shit, or he's saying a lot of shit that is crazy and out there. And it's just, it kind of pops, on the social media for a day and it goes away. But I actually think that what he's sort of done here is a little bit bigger than just that.
Yeah, I think so. And I want to add one more thing onto this fight, and not necessarily to the extent of the storyline from that angle, but what did you make? We were talking off recording of I didn't watch the whole press conference, and neither did you. But there was another snippet I heard. Izzy basically has put this kind of aura around Sean of, and we've talked about this in the past, he has everything to gain and nothing to lose. And that's why he thinks this is still a dangerous fight. Izzy saying this. Would you agree with that sentiment when you look at how Sean ended up in this title fight? Do you think you can agree with what Izzy says there?
I think I would want to talk to someone who doesn't agree with that, because I think it's pretty clear the UFC, when they had nobody else to fight Israel Adesanya, when Dricus, the man that they had set up clearly to be the next title challenger, was unable to take the fight, he beat Robert Whittaker. So that took Robert out of the equation. You had Jared Cannonier, but I'm not sure. I know Cannonier ended up weighing in as the backup here.
Yeah.
But he had lost to Izzy a year ago. Sean Strickland was like the only guy who you could put in there and say, here's a fresh face for Adesanya. And the UFC, instead of just embracing that and being like, all right, let's do it, they really tried to find any other option. Dominic, there were even talks of putting Yuri Prohaska and Alex Pereira in the main event of this card. Could you imagine? They come back to Australia. Israel Adesanya says, I want nothing more than to headline this card in my country. And then they end up turning around and giving it to his biggest rival,
his arch rival.
And not to mention the fact that Pereira would have been turning around in 2 months, which is now what you find. Well, less than 2 months. He fought at the end of July. So the UFC really didn't want Sean Strickland in a title fight because they know what could potentially happen here.
Mhm.
And then not just is it hard to kind of promote him and put him out there to some of the more casual fans or
Right.
casual sports fans or sports media because, they take probably a lot of what he says a little more serious than,
Mhm.
us in MMA. We're a little more used to seeing some of the
Yeah.
kooky stuff. So it's pretty clear if the UFC had any other choice, they were going another direction.
Yeah.
So Sean Strickland, unless he just went on a massive winning streak, was never going to be in a title fight.
Yeah.
But timing is everything. He's the man that stepped up. He's not the stepfather. He's the father that stepped up. And that's, I don't know why that just came to mind, but that's why he's here. And yeah, if you're him, you got to think, I got to go for it because
Yep. Why
if I
not?
don't win here, not only did I everything I just set up where he could really make himself a made man
Mhm.
in what a wild world that would be, but also because he'll probably never be back in this position again.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Yeah, we do have one more fight to talk about, Dominic, the co-main event. Tai Tuivasa taking on Alexander Volkov. Tuivasa ranked number 6, Volkov number 7, yet Tuivasa comes at a plus 205, Dominic. Would you like to explain to the people why
Mm.
Alexander Volkov finds himself as such a big favorite at minus 250, and if you agree with those odds or not?
I definitely don't agree. I think there's only so many matchups amongst ranked heavyweights where someone should be a minus 250 and a plus 205 on the flip side. And I just don't feel like this is one of them. Volkov has looked decent as of late, I believe, tallied all 4 of his last 5, 6'7", a giant of a man. And he is a dangerous fighter. He honestly, some of his last few fights, he's looked the best that we've ever seen him. But minus 250 against a guy that carries the power and that will bring it, push a pace, bring the aggressiveness out into Volkov. I think that's a scary line if you're wanting to be a Volkov better. And truthfully, to me, outside of unders potentially, which I don't even feel good about unders in this fight because we know how durable Volkov is, and I could see him trying to drag this out. If you're not betting tie, I wouldn't bet this fight.
Yeah, I don't know what the Volkov by decision price is, but maybe there's some value there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, this is a weird line to me. I almost feel like something about it makes me feel like am I being suckered here into taking Tai Tuivasa? But no, I think what is really the biggest factor here for a lot of people for the people making these odds is that Volkov has a massive size advantage. He's
Yes.
6'7".
Yeah.
He's got an 80-inch reach. Tai Tuivasa 6'2", 75-inch reach. So, 5 inches of reach maybe doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But look back to when Volkov fought a guy like Marcin Tybura, right?
Sure.
Tybura, who was on a pretty good run at that time. I know he's coming off a pretty tough loss to Aspinall, but at that time, he was on a win streak going in there. And Volkov simply just kept the jab in his face, kept him at a distance, picked his shots clean from a distance. Tybura had no answer. He couldn't get inside, had no success whatsoever in doing so. I don't think it's the smart idea to use that fight, if that's what's being done here, as a reason for why Tai Tuivasa would also have the same struggles.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tuivasa is a better fighter than Tybura is right now.
Yeah.
I think he's a harder hitter.
For sure.
I think he's probably, it's weird to talk about a guy like Tai Tuivasa and some of these other heavyweights because they're so known for their power.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also known for where they're kind of deficient at in other
Sure.
areas of MMA. So they sort of get labeled as just a power puncher. But I think Tai Tuivasa is smarter when it comes to finding ways inside in the fight because he knows what kind of damage he can do with one shot. Interesting that you described Volkov as being a durable fighter, and maybe that's true, but I don't see him being able to eat a clean shot from Tai Tuivasa if he's able to land flush. Think of Derek Lewis, who got dominated by Volkov for almost the entirety of 15 minutes, to the point where Dominic sitting there in the living room watching that fight said, well, this fight's over. As soon as he says that, what happens? Overhand right lands absolutely perfect, and Derek Lewis goes in for the kill, and the rest is history. His balls were hot. All
His balls
that.
were hot. Yeah.
I think Tai Tuivasa, 2-fight losing streak. I think he's due for a bounce back here. Volkov, at his best, is a better fighter than Tuivasa.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know if I really foresee Volkov being able to finish Tuivasa. I think Tuivasa can finish Volkov pretty easily. So at heavyweight, that's going to be the edge for me.
Yes, it absolutely is. And if the losses for Tai that he's coming in on have any factor in these odds, I think that's crazy too, because I mean it's Cyril Gane who has also beaten Volkov, and it's Sergey Pavlovich who is going to be the backup fighter for a title fight in Madison Square Garden. So, I think like I said, we've already seen Gane beat Volkov. I'm pretty confident Pavlovich would also beat Volkov. It's not the losses thing. So this line is one of the more interesting, confusing lines, I think, of the whole card for sure.
Yeah, if someone told me like, oh, I think Volkov's going to win, I wouldn't blame him. I think when I initially saw this matchup was booked, I thought it was a bad one for Tai on paper. But to say it's bad enough to where he's a 2-1 underdog, I just don't really buy that. You're right, exactly. Heavyweight, most heavyweight fights should not have odds like this. So
yeah,
maybe it's a sucker play, but I'm a suck on it.
What did he say?
As much as I can.
Out of here.
What are we going?